Hey, Whitney here. So I wanted to do a video today talking about food storage, which is not like the most sexy or glamorous topic ever, but I have a group of friends and we've been talking about, just being prepared and really planning ahead. And they asked me to kind of talk about food storage because I actually have several times in my adult life, my husband and I and our children have lived off of our food storage. And so I wanted to cover how to have food storage, but have food storage that like you're actually going to use. I think that's one of the biggest or most important things that a lot of people don't consider. So the area I grew up in, everybody has food storage, right? It was kind of one of those things that you had, but most people would rather die than have to eat their food storage. It was like dry rice and beans and nothing really that, anything short of the apocalypse, nobody was going to eat that food storage. And I feel like that's kind of how a lot of people feel about food storage. So I wanted to cover ways that you can actually have food storage in the event of, the grocery stores not having things that you need, or also just not being able to buy that. So like I mentioned, in my adult life, my husband and I have actually lived off our food storage a couple of different times. The first was when I decided to branch out and start my own business. I totally jumped 2 feet in and didn't really have anything in savings. I didn't have anything planned, right? I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm doing this. I'm on my own. And it was going from 2 incomes to 1, and we had 2 babies, 2 young kids. And so we lived off our food storage then. And I can tell you right now, if we had your typical like rice and beans food storage, we wouldn't have made it. Like, it would have been way too hard emotionally. A lot of people don't realize how much what you eat and how much food ties into your emotional health and well-being. So that's something that you really need to consider when you're building a food storage, or you're considering, different types of emergency preparedness. Your mental state is completely shook. If you are already in a situation where there's not food at the grocery store for you to go get, or you don't have the finances to provide food for your family, you're already in a really stressed mental state. And so then trying to feed your family off of rice and beans and be okay is really, really stressful. So I just jotted down a couple notes, and these are some of the things that I shared with my friends and just kind of told them about, okay, this is how you should do food storage. So you have food storage that you're actually going to eat. The very first is to get things in your storage that your family actually eats. So when people think of emergency preparedness, or they think of food storage, they think of, like I said, rice and beans, or those MREs, basically meals that that are powdered or something like that have a really long shelf life, when food storage actually should be things that you're going to eat on a regular basis. So how we've set up our food storage is we just stock up on things that we really eat and that we eat frequently. So the best way to get started with that is, you don't want to go spend a ton of money on food that's going to sit on a shelf, and if you don't eat it because of an emergency, you're going to be throwing it away. So I like to think of, and please, like, totally understand, I am not organized enough to have like an entire week worth of meals planned out to perfection. So having 30 days to 3 months is not what I'm saying at all. But what we do is we will sit down and look at, okay, in 30 days, and it changes, right, with the season and things like that, but in the next 30 days, what are some of the meals that we know we're going to eat? And then we buy all the non-perishable foods that would go with those meals that we actually eat. Our food storage works more like a store inside our home, where we have upstairs, we have like a pantry and some places where we keep the things that we're using for that upcoming week. And downstairs in our food storage, we can go down and rotate things out of there. So one of the things that my kids eat a lot of is pasta. They love pasta. So we can go downstairs, bring some pasta upstairs, and just make a note. Oh, sorry, I'm sitting on the trampoline. The lighting was just so nice out here. So we can go downstairs and bring up pasta and then just make a note, hey, we took some pasta from downstairs, and then the next time we go to the store we replace that pasta, if that makes sense. We also you want to make sure that in your food storage you have balanced meals. So a lot of times your food storage, like I said, is going to be rice and beans. It's going to be those MREs, and people aren't thinking of protein or fruits and vegetables. And nobody can survive eating, I don't know, not real meals. It just totally messes with your head. You know how there's the joke that college students will live on ramen noodles? Well, there's only so long that you can live on ramen noodles without going home for a home cooked meal before not only is your body going to suffer, but mentally it's going to be really, really hard. That's one of the first things that people feel homesick about, is having those meals. So making sure that even if you're not a big meat eater, I have friends that are vegetarian, I have friends that are vegan, and I always tell them to keep some sort of meat in your food storage. And again, I'm talking food storage like dry food storage. So things that I always keep on hand are canned chicken breast, canned tuna fish, and one of the reasons is my family eats those a lot. Chicken salad sandwiches, tuna fish sandwiches, tuna casserole. Those are things that are all basically 100% pull from the pantry and be able to make, and they're things that are staples for our family that we eat. So think along those lines. I also keep canned shrimp, which sounds so disgusting, but it's delicious thrown into a pasta salad. Something that I learned from my mother-in-law. My husband's favorite macaroni salad has these little tiny salad shrimp, but in the event of an emergency or us not being able to get other meat, that's going to be a really good protein source. People who don't eat protein, right? You're not going to be able to get your incredible burgers, which is a whole nother story I could get into, but you're not going to be able to get your veggie burgers and things like that. So having another source of meat that's actually palatable to you is going to be really important. I don't keep things like canned salmon. I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of fish. I have a lot of other meat that I keep in my freezer, but canned clams are something I keep, because clam chowder is just one of those, like, I have my grandpa's recipe. I shared it on Instagram, but it is just totally covered because that's something that my entire family looks forward to when I make it. And it's a comfort food for us. So having those comfort foods in your food storage is super important as well. So make sure that you have some vegetables, make sure that you have some, you know, fruit. Fruit is one that a lot of people don't think about. I can peaches and some other fruits, like I make jams or jellies, but having even just those little fruit cups is really going to be beneficial as far as being able to round out a meal or whip together a fruit salad or something like that when your family is eating, basically in survival mode. The last thing that people always forget when they're putting together their food storage, right? You're thinking like, oh, I'm going into the apocalypse or the end of the world. I'm not going to think about these extras. But thinking about your mental state, again, you want to throw in a couple extras. So some of the things that I always keep are like chips and different snacks, things that do have a good shelf life, but like I said, we rotate through them. So we'll go downstairs and get chips, write chips on the list, and replenish the downstairs, storage stock from those. Cupcake and cake mixes and brownie mixes, even if you're a person who makes everything 100% from scratch, if you can't get certain things, or let's say you have flour but your flour is going to be used to make bread, you're not going to have those extra things, having those in the event that like your kid has a birthday or just to pick up the morale of your family. Again, this is coming from someone who has literally fed our family off of food storage. Sometimes a freaking box of brownies is gonna make the hugest difference just in how you feel and help to normalize a lot of stuff in difficult times. So make sure that you include some of those extras. Like I said, cake mixes to make cakes or cupcakes, and then like brownie mix is a must-have for me. Like I could eat brownies every day, but having those in my food storage, I know in the event that something goes down, I'm gonna be able to go pull those out and just bring a bright spot to my family. Now, how to store this stuff. This is a hard lesson that I learned. Like I said, I've always had food storage. I've been very fortunate that I grew up in a family that had cattle, and my husband's family has always had, beef. And so having meat wasn't really something that was hard for us. Keeping canned goods, home canned and store-bought canned goods, is easy as well. But I learned a really hard lesson when we moved to our new house, and I had so much space for storage. At our house previous to this, I literally had like a tiny little closet and a crawl space. So our food storage was anything that could be super compact. But when we moved here, I wanted to fill it with, pancake mix and these brownies and cupcakes and things like that I'm talking about, pastas and things that, they have a good long shelf life, soup mixes that weren't, pre-made soups out of a can. I have a friend that makes delicious soup mixes. I'm not really a big fan of pre-made canned soup, but some of these powdered mixes that you mix your own stuff into and can make them totally your own and make them really delicious. I love those. So I filled our food storage with those things, and then we got some mice in there. This was before we had a cat. Things are under control now, but literally it was like crying and throwing away food storage. So mice are not like us, like they're gonna open one thing and eat that till it's gone and open something else. They'll chew little holes in everything. So I hadn't been down in my food storage. I wasn't keeping really close tabs on it. And I went down there and it was like they had nibbled holes in everything. Anything that was not in a can or a glass mason jar had been nibbled through. And so throwing that stuff away, I'm just seeing like dollar signs going into the garbage and just crying about it. So this is a lesson that I learned for myself. Protect that food. Like I said, I'm very blessed. I have a lot of food storage area now. I have my entire basement is unfinished and I have a cold storage room. But I now keep everything, even if it's going on a shelf, if it is in a box or some sort of package that a mouse could chew through, it goes into a clear plastic tote. So the kind, that you would store basically anything in. I like the clear ones because then me or the kids or my husband can see what's actually in there. And we don't have to open every single tote searching for what we're looking for. I'm not super good at labeling everything, but if it's clear, I can look in this and see, okay, this has, macaroni and cheese, or this is my pasta, those type of things. And because the lids latch onto them, it completely keeps the mice out. Now I keep those clear plastic totes up on my racks. I have food storage racks, but because I lost a bunch of food once, everything that it can be chewed through goes into one of those totes. So really, you don't even have to have, racks to put stuff on. If you have the totes, I have some that are just stacked. So you don't have to have, racks and things like that. You can keep these in the plastic totes, and those totes are stackable as well. This is great if you just have a crawl space or an area that, you wouldn't want to just put food into for fear of mice and spiders and things like that. Having those totes that close up is really, really helpful. I recommend that you keep them in a dark, dry place. If they're in those totes, they're going to stay dry. At our old house, the crawl space would get really damp, especially if we got a lot of rain. So the totes are just that extra layer of protection. And again, like I said, if you don't have the racks, if you're not putting your food directly inside your house, let's say the only space you have is in your garage, I wouldn't get clear totes. I would get dark totes to keep the light and things like that off your stuff as well. And yeah, I keep looking at my notes because I was like, I don't want to forget any of this stuff. I wrote it down. Try to rotate and date everything. This is something that I'm getting better with, especially where I have more space and I'm storing more stuff. I will, when we get home from the store, I'll write the date that we bought the items on the outside of like rice or pasta or things like that. And then I try to do really good at rotating them. I'll be honest, I have some of those can rotators, but it's so frustrating because literally they keep changing the sizes of cans. So even just 10 years ago, the can sorters that I had set up for regular cans, soup cans now fall right through them. So if you didn't get adjustable ones, I mean, you're out of luck. And I'm not going to keep up with that trend. Like, I'm not going to keep buying new totes or can sorters and things like that. So I just really am working hard to get in the habit of writing the date on them. And when I go to get something, or the kids go down to get something, they know to look for the dates. So like with rice, I'll buy rice in a box. I write the date on the top. You can easily look inside the tote that the rice is in and grab the box that has the oldest date. So trying to write dates on things will help you to rotate through that, because again, you're not just storing food for the apocalypse. This is stuff that you're actually going to be using and then replenishing. And in the event that, I mean, what kind of happened here where I live when COVID hit is the shelves in the stores were empty. It was so scary. I remember the day that we went under, not lockdown, because we never really got under lockdown, but restriction. And my husband called me. I'd been teaching a class. I was over an hour away from home. And he said, hey, you should just stop and grab a gallon of milk and a couple loaves of bread, because things are about to get real. And I was like, he's crazy, right? I went into the grocery store and I saw fear in people that I have never seen before. There was a woman in line next to me, and I stood in line for 2 hours. 2 hours. And there were people with like multiple shopping carts full of food. And the lady next to me had 3 small children with her, and she was just scared to death, you could tell. And her cart was full of macaroni and cheese and ramen noodles and all these processed but supposedly shelf-stable things, as long as you can keep mice and bugs out of them. And she's like, I would never normally let my kids eat this, but I'm just afraid to have nothing. Like, how scary is that? How do you like deal with what's going on in the world and still be a productive human and not have food to feed your family? That's another reason I'm just like fanatical. That's why I'm making this video. But try to rotate and date everything. And like I said, buy the stuff that you actually use. That's the only way food storage is going to work. Seriously, seriously. Use it as your store and restock. Like I said, upstairs we have the stuff that's coming for like the next week. We go downstairs, and as we take things from downstairs, it's kind of like our store. When you bring stuff from downstairs, you just write down what you took, and then when you go to the store, you replace those items, and then all of your fresh or perishable foods for the week. It helps because I'm not super organized. Honestly, I'm a hot mess when it comes to like meal planning and having a calendar or a schedule or things like that. So, for food. So that it's really helpful to just know, oh crap, I totally forgot to grab this at the store. I know I have some downstairs. Run and grab it, write it on the list. Next week we resupply that. So that's it's helpful if you're not really good at meal prep or planning, which I am not, okay? So just a couple of other tips. Think of things that take up less space and are lighter. One of these being like chicken stock. I used to buy chicken stock by the case. My food storage had tons of chicken stock because I do like to cook home cooked meals, and having my own chicken stock wasn't always possible. Right? So when I make a chicken, I will also make chicken stock and I'll put it in the freezer. Well, that's not nearly as accessible as it is in the can. But the cans are bulky, they take up a ton of space, and they actually have a shorter shelf life than something like bouillon. So I purchase bouillon. It comes in beef, vegetable, and chicken, and I do keep that in my food storage. If I don't have chicken stock on hand, then I will use the bouillon. So those little cubes, you mix it with a cup of water and it actually creates like a cup of stock. Whereas so sometimes if I make a big soup, like a French onion soup, I need 8 cups of stock. I'm gonna be opening 4 cans of beef broth as opposed to 4 cups of water and throwing in those cubes. Okay, I might be off on those measurements because I don't have the box in front of me. I still read the box and what it says, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I'm saving space, and those basically will last forever, to be honest. I've never seen one expire or go bad. Little person over here. Okay, home canning is like one of those things that it kind of became a hobby for me. Again, I'm truly blessed. My dad grows a huge garden every year, and I could go and get just flats of produce from him. So flats of tomatoes, I would get tons of green beans, 5-gallon buckets of cucumbers. And so I learned how to can those things to make them last. So some of the things that our family is like totally in love with are green beans. We eat tons of fresh green beans. We eat just plain canned green beans, like just canned in water with a little bit of salt, and dilly beans. So those are basically pickled green beans. I pickle jalapenos. Those are something that I give away as Christmas gifts, and people look forward to them every year. I've done jams and jellies. I do a lot of stewed tomatoes. I know people do a lot of different basically products with tomatoes. So you can do marinara sauce, you can do salsa, you can do those things. Well, I do a lot of just stewed tomatoes because then I have them on hand to put in whatever I am making. So if I'm making chili, I can add cans of just plain stewed tomatoes. If I want to make marinara sauce, I'm, doing garlic and onions and Italian seasoning, and I can take that one can of stewed tomatoes and turn it into so many different things. Whereas if you can it as tomatoes or as salsa, that's all you can use it for. So that's another, suggestion when you're doing your food storage. If you are home canning, I'm going to do a ton of videos this year, hopefully, if the garden will work with me, if we can get some warm weather and get some of those things producing. But home canning was like the thing me and my husband did right after we had kids and things were super tight. I would get these flats of produce for my dad after the kids were in bed. We'd stay up together and we would can. We would do the green beans and tomatoes. It's not an easy process by any means, but it's so rewarding to just look at a shelf and see it totally filled with home canned goods. I don't know, I'm a nerd. I love everything in a mason jar too, so that's a huge part of me. Just like I'll line them all up in straight lines and just look at them like, okay, maybe just me, maybe I'm just the biggest nerd ever. But home canning, great way to add to your food storage. Last thing on here, don't forget about meat and fruit. Those are two things that people they're not easily bought in cans, or they're not something that's a staple that you'll use a lot. So make sure you have some sort of canned meat and canned fruit. And then lastly, don't forget your freezer. So again, I'm very blessed. We have a half a cow, and I mean, like literally tomorrow I'm going to pick up 215 pounds of pork. Yeah, for my freezer. My husband's a little crazy. We get a whole nother cow at Christmas. But, no matter what happens, A, I know where my meat came from, and B, I have it. So those are good things. But use your freezer for other things. I always keep a gallon of milk in my freezer. So it will be probably 6 to 8 months expired by the time that it ever comes out of there or that we use it, but it's been frozen, so it's fine. In an emergency, having that gallon of milk is going to be really helpful, not only for a lot of recipes and baking, but just to like have a bowl of cereal. I will tell you, it does change consistency, so it's not like a fresh gallon of milk that you go and pick up, but you have it and it's there. I also keep cheese in my freezer. Cheese actually freezes best if it is that pre-shredded kind. Now, when they shred it, they coat it in, flour and other things, anti-caking agents, to keep it from sticking together. So it does freeze well, and when you thaw it, it basically is the same as the day that you bought it in the store, no matter how many months have passed, as long as it stays frozen. A block of cheese changes consistency. I see you, you're totally busted. So you can freeze a block of cheese. Just know that when you thaw it out, it's going to be a little more crumbly. It's not going to shred or grate as easily as before, but depending on what you're using the cheese for, that could be totally fine. I usually take the block in the package and I'll put it inside a freezer bag. Just those different layers will help with, freezer burn and help it to be more of what you're actually looking for in a block of cheese. But I always have cheese in my freezer. Things that people don't think about to use their freezer for are also like baked goods. So I always have a loaf of bread, a thing of hamburger buns and a thing of hot dog buns in my freezer. The reason for that, they don't go moldy and they thaw out relatively quickly, especially if you have a warm day. And I can't tell you how many times I've like started cooking hamburgers and have no hamburger buns. And I can go and grab those out and use them and then just replace them. So it's like I always have those things on hand. Now, your freezer space is, if you only have a tiny bit of freezer space, putting things like bread and buns and cheese and a gallon of milk, for Pete's sakes, isn't really feasible. But if you have the space, or let's say you have a storage freezer, most people I know, they don't keep that thing super packed. So that's actually not good to keep your freezer partially empty. The reason for that, if the power goes out, or let's say we lose power for some reason, if you have a fully stocked freezer full of frozen items, those are going to stay frozen for a couple of days without power. And it's not very often anymore that we go a couple of days without power. The caveat to that is you can't keep opening it and checking on everything. Every time you open your freezer, warm air gets in and cold air escapes. But if you have a fully stocked frozen chest freezer, it can last up to 3 days. We were out of town once, so I don't know exactly how many days our freezer was off. It had tripped the breaker or something happened, and we came home and our freezer was not on, and it was a couple days before we even noticed it, right before it like started to smell. And some of the stuff that we took out and had spoiled was literally still frozen in the middle. So keeping your freezer fully stocked is a benefit, because think about it, it's basically a very insulated cooler. And if you had a cooler full of ice blocks and you didn't open it, it would stay frozen for a really long time, right? Your ice wouldn't melt. And if you kept it in the shade, which I don't know many people whose freezers are out in full sunlight, but it's going to stay frozen. So keep your freezer stocked and full and utilize it for some of these other things that I'm mentioning. Like I said, I always keep meat in mind. Hot dogs are something that's super easy. And again, don't think of your food storage as like if the end of the world comes and you go and you buy $500 worth of MREs online and keep them until you actually need them and then realize that they've all gone bad or expired and it's not safe to eat anymore. Use your food storage, rotate your food storage, and build it up slowly over time. Don't go to the store and spend hundreds of dollars buying all this stuff that you don't know if you're ever going to eat. Make your meal plan and just try to keep food on hand. I mean, the best would be enough food and water for every member of your family for 3 to 6 months. I don't have that, right? If something big happens, I know that our water system is one of the last things to go down. I can either go to the store and buy bottled or gallons of water, or worst case scenario, I do have some 50-gallon drums that I could fill up, because our water system now can be unmanned for days at a time. So be smart, start small. Even if you only have a tiny bit of space, just start piling up some of those items that you use the most and that are going to make a big difference to your family in the event, whether financial or something cataclysmic, or I mean, heck, like this year, just the stores are empty. Make sure that your family is going to be able to survive and thrive and not be living off packaged MREs. Okay, I hope this was super helpful, and I hope that if you enjoyed this and other information like it about being more self-sufficient, that you subscribe to the channel. I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye!